My childhood hobby shop is closing. So, I did what any sane person would do and bought the shop's train layout. Wait, what? Sane people don't do that? Well, you're probably right. Let me explain. I've been into trains as long as I can remember. For over 30 years. If it ran on rails, it's had my attention. My parents purchased a wooden Brio playset in 1993 to keep me occupied during downtime on a trip, and from then on, that was it. So I guess this whole thing should come as no surprise to anyone who knew me then. My personal history with this shop probably deserves its own video, so I'll save most of it for another day. But suffice to say, learning that it was to close was gutting. I thought about what would happen to the store's in-scale display layout, which the owner and a few others had built and rebuilt over the course of many years of work. The mental image of it all being tipped into a dumpster by the landlord after the open sign turned off for the final time was absolutely sickening. Oh, but nothing I could do, or so I thought. One day while I was in the shop talking with the owner, I asked about the layout, and he made me an offer I absolutely could not refuse. And now here it sits in my basement. One U-Haul, several helping hands, and a whole lot of sweat equity later. So what all do I have here? It's a display layout, so it's primarily designed to run trains continuously. It's 10 feet long end to end, and a bit less than 3 feet deep, which is plenty of real estate for in-scale. There's a continuous loop on the upper level, a continuous loop on the lower level, and an inner switching area that has a runaround track and several spurs for some operational interest. The layout is constructed of Kato Unitrack sectional rail and turnouts, with a few sections of flex track in the tunnels. Magnetic uncouplers make it possible to set out cars in various spots, and a push-button control panel actuates the turnout electronics conveniently all from one place. For the last little while, the layout sat idle for some time with the power packs disconnected and the trains all stored away. And I'm told that at one point, one of the friendly store cats did some unauthorized terrain manipulation. But outside of that rather large hole in the landscaping, I'm willing to bet that all this layout needs to be running trains again is some track maintenance, and for the power packs to be hooked back up with the wiring all sorted out. So let's do just that. The layout is wired for DC operation and came with this MRC Tech 4 dual power pack. Like I said earlier, there are 3 separate operation zones here with the 2 completely separate loops and the 3rd detached switching area with multiple spurs and a runaround track. Job 1 is to identify how we're going to wire this back up. Since there are 2 loops that are completely isolated from everything else, I'm thinking we can connect either one or both of those to one side of this dual power pack and leave the second side free to run the part of the layout that contains all the spurs and turnouts. Now let's take a look underneath the layout. There is definitely a lot going on here, and it did take me a while to trace all the wires, but I think I've got most of it figured out. There's some empty light bulb sockets that used to illuminate a display case underneath the layout, and its wires have been clipped. We don't need to worry about those. There's a power outlet with a switch that controls a pair of fluorescent lamps that were the most recent display case illumination, and once I sorted out the cords, they fired right up to help me look at everything else. There's a few places where we can see wires come through the subterranean structure, and we can kind of get a general idea of which sections of track everything is hooked up to. There's also a huge bundle of wires that I'm thinking have something to do with the turnout wiring, but as of the release of this video, I'm still not quite sure. The important thing, though, was to figure out which wires connected to which track areas, and I managed to do that, or at least I'm pretty sure. There's only one way to find out. Now, it's possible that a train could run on this layout as is, but since we're already making such good progress, let's go ahead and do some quick cleaning. I'll use this vacuum attachment kit to give our right-of-way a little touch-up and make sure there's no loose debris or scenery bits that have migrated to where they shouldn't be during the trip from the hobby shop to my house. Off camera, I'll poke inside the tunnel portals and come around back to hit the emergency access as well. Alright, seems like we should be good to go. Now for the fun part. I'm going to hook up the lower loop to one side of this dual power pack, and off camera I'll hook up the upper loop to the other side. When I went to go pick up the layout, I mentioned that I didn't have a whole lot in the way of in-scale equipment, so the shop owner very generously included this Kato starter set for me here. So let's take this out of the box and see what's inside. We have a Santa Fe F7 diesel, we have a tank car painted for UTLX, 2 covered hoppers, and of course a Santa Fe caboose. All very complementary to this layout's theming, and a very good start to my in-scale collection. This orange thing here is a re-railer tool, which will help a lot with lining these tiny wheels up on the track. I'll get our locomotive on the lower loop, and we're going to apply some power to see if it moves. And it does, but only for a short distance. Like I said earlier, these rails are likely quite dirty and will need a good cleaning. But this proves that we've hooked the power up correctly and both the power pack and the locomotive are working. Let's try the upper loop now. Same story here. Wires are all hooked up, locomotive moves, and then stops once it crosses a rail joiner. So some cleaning and current continuity troubleshooting are needed here, but it also works. You might notice that the layout's kind of bare. That's because I removed a bunch of figures and vehicles as well as any structures that weren't glued down before moving the layout into my basement, just so nothing would get lost. And I'll talk more about the different scenes in this layout and how they interact with each other in a future video. So for now, let's just get some of this stuff back in place so you can get a better idea of what this is supposed to look like. There's a lot more for us to get into here and plenty to discuss about the layout design in future videos. But for now, here is a top-down shot as best as I could do in my basement, camera right up against the bottom of the main floor of my house. So you can see how everything interacts here, and I'm going to do my best in a future video to give you an actual proper track plan with track planning software so you can see where everything goes. But you see the upper loop kind of climbs up the back of the layout and then it goes over itself, folds in behind some terrain, and then goes back down to the other side, while the lower loop comes right across the front of the layout, turns around underneath terrain, and then comes back in, well, beneath the upper loop, as lower loops are wont to do, goes by this passenger station and enters the terrain again, and this middle section here has a whole bunch of switchbacks, and when it goes into the tunnel, it actually has a lead that goes about 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet, into each of those tunnel portals, so you can actually move a decent-sized train, for in scale at least, through there and get some nice backing up movements. And so we're just about at the end of this video, but before we go, let's talk about the projects I have in store for this layout, because there's still a whole lot of stuff that has to get done before this thing's in proper working order. I had figured there would need to be some track or electrical work done, and it turns out that's the case, and that's fine. You know, you use a layout for the first time in several years, and the track's going to need to be cleaned, deoxidized, whatever have you. So we're going to tackle that in the next video, and hopefully get everything running nice and smoothly. I also want to investigate the turnout wiring and all the stuff in this inner switching area, because Kato Unitrack turnouts have what's called power routing feature, where whichever way the points are set to go, the electricity will flow, or so I've been told. So we're going to see exactly how that works. I did trace the leads for the wiring in that section, and it seems that it should be good to go. But we're going to see. I didn't want to blow anything up rushing to put this video out or anything. So that will definitely be a topic for a future video as well. Now that big hole on the left side of the layout is definitely going to need to be fixed soon. I'm told that a few years back the scenery on the right side of the layout had been completely redone, and they were in the process of redoing the rest, but it never got finished. And at one point, one of the store's friendly cats ended up punching through the ground near the coal mine scene. So yeah, talk about a catastrophe there. But the good news is that all of this will be a great opportunity to learn some scenery techniques and give that corner of the layout some new life. Good future video for sure. I'd also love to add some neat details and scenes in a few places. There's already a few, but I'd like to hear your ideas for things to include, so drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. And then finally, of course, I also want to obtain some more in-scale equipment that might be period correct, or at least believable for, I think the theme of this layout I was told was 1940s, 1950s, just rural America. So, you know, pretty wide selection of stuff we can do there. I believe while it was operational in the store, the layout primarily ran some Central of Georgia motive power, pulling plenty of boxcars and hoppers. So it'd be great to find some models of that stuff, or Central of Georgia passenger equipment as well, to use on the inner loop with the passenger depot. For now, though, this classic Santa Fe F7 will be a great way to enjoy the layout once we get everything working correctly and have some fun running trains. And that's what it's all about, right? So thanks very much for watching this video. I'm really excited to get this thing back up and running exactly like it deserves and, you know, carry on a little piece of the store once it's gone. It means a whole lot to me, and I'm glad you joined me today. I'll see you next week.